Chapter 45:45. The black-clothed middle-aged man tapped his hand on the table. After pondering for a while, his eyes flashed, and he said, "Elder Yuan, you should personally go and watch those children. Let's see how the Yang family deals with this matter. Before the Yang family makes a move, don't alert the enemy." When the old man heard this, he paused for a moment before asking, "Why does the boss want to keep an eye on those children?" Those children had no interaction with them. Even if he was curious, why would he need to keep an eye on them personally? The black-clothed middle-aged man chuckled. He gently turned the teacup in his hand and asked, "Elder Yuan, did you clearly see that little boy's move today?" The old man was startled and shook his head. "I didn't see it clearly." At that time, they hadn't thought that the little boy would counterattack so quickly, so they hadn't been able to clearly see his movements and speed. They only knew that by the time they saw him, he had already grabbed the Yang family's second young master's hand, and at the same time, kicked the other party's chin. The black-clothed middle-aged man said thoughtfully, "Looking at all the families in the city, there isn't a 10-year-old boy with that kind of courage and speed. Not to mention, that little boy's strength can't be seen. It is obvious that he is hiding it. Tell me, what kind of secret cultivation method is that even you and I can't see through?" Hearing this, the old man's heart moved. He lowered his gaze and looked at the black-clothed middle-aged man. "Boss means, these children have a noble aura, but they don't have any strong cultivators protecting them. They came here to rent a small courtyard and live in seclusion. I'm guessing that they are refugees and must have some kind of treasure on them." The black-clothed middle-aged man said and looked at the old man. "Do you understand what I mean?" The old man's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly lowered his head. "I understand. Go. If this matter is done well, I will reward you greatly," he said in a calm voice. "Yes," the old man replied, and then left. When he closed the door, he raised his head with a complicated look in his eyes. At his age, even if there was some kind of treasure, he wouldn't care too much about it. Especially when it came to these young children, he couldn't bear to do it. However, he knew that if he didn't do it well, boss would send someone else to do it. He sighed softly in his heart and then walked away. On the other side, the Yang family. Listening to his subordinate's report, the Yang family head's face darkened as he frowned and said, "Only the 3 children and the guards are renting that small courtyard? Have you found out everything? Can't you find out where they come from?" Reporting to Patriarch, I was unable to find out their origins. However, I did hear from a Lin family guard that I was on good terms with, that he mentioned these 3 children. The guard replied, "Oh, what's the matter?" Patriarch Yang raised his eyebrows and asked. The guard hurriedly said, "This subordinate knows a guard brother from the Lin family. When he went out to investigate, he also heard a few words from him. These 3 children are secretly protected by experts. The Lin family has suffered losses because of this. In the end, this matter was suppressed by the Lin family head. He even sent people to bring gifts to apologize, but they couldn't even enter the door of that small courtyard." "There's such a thing?" Patriarch Yang was slightly taken aback. "What is going on here? Tell me in detail." Chapter 45:46. Hearing this, Master Yang stared at him and paused for a moment before saying, "Then go and try to fish for more information. I want to know their origin and what grudges they have with the Lin family. What kind of loss did the Lin family suffer, and why were they suppressed? Go and find out for me. I will reward you handsomely later." "Yes." The guard hurriedly responded and retreated. The next day, after finding out that the Lin family had suffered a loss, he also found out that there were experts secretly guarding the small courtyard. Thus, after much consideration, the Yang family head decided to suppress the news of his son being beaten. The Lin family's influence was not small. If the Yang family were to touch someone who could make the Lin family suffer a loss, it would be a little too tactless. If this matter was spread out and people knew that the Lin family had made things difficult for the children, they would be in the wrong no matter what. Since those children could not be touched and could not be quietly dealt with, this matter could only be put aside. In the small courtyard, and the rest spent another 2 days peacefully. In these 2 days, spent most of his time cultivating and occasionally gave pointers to Mu Chun, Mu Yu, and 17. After drinking the calming soup, The two children slept soundly at night. Their usual uneasiness also faded a little, but there was still a period of time every day when their hearts palpitated with fear. Big brother, that soup doesn't seem to be better. What should we do? Leaned on the table and said with a bitter face. Muchin also said, Me too. I don't want to drink that soup anymore. If you don't want to drink it, then don't drink it. Hauer said, Take it easy these days and don't cultivate. See if it will be like this if you don't cultivate. Just as he finished speaking, he saw Mu Chun and Mu Yu's faces suddenly turn slightly pale and sweat seeped out of their foreheads. Both of them clutched at their clothes and looked pained. Chun Yua, Hauer panicked, and an anxious and worried expression appeared on his little face. That feeling is coming again, Mu Chun said as he leaned on the table and rubbed his chest with one hand while groaning. Master Chun miss you. 17 saw them and couldn't help but worry. 17. Carry Chun into the room. How? Hurriedly said, and went forward to carry Yu and quickly returned to the room. 17 quickly stepped forward and carried Mu Chun into the room. She placed him on the bed and retreated to the side. Hauer sat behind the two of them on the bed. He gathered spiritual power in his palms and said to them, Take a deep breath. At the same time, he gathered spiritual power in his palms and gently rubbed their backs. The two little fellows listened to his words, closed their eyes, and breathed deeply according to his instructions. After about half an incense stick of time, the feeling gradually faded. They exhaled lightly and slowly opened their eyes. How is it? Are you feeling better? How? Hurriedly asked when he saw that their bodies had relaxed. Big brother, that feeling has disappeared again, Mu Chun said as he clutched his chest, feeling a little strange. Big brother, why are we like this? Why would Big brother and I feel heartache together? You are asked in puzzlement. Chapter 45-47. Actually, I've been thinking for the past few days. Maybe it's not because of anything else, but because of the blood connection. You sense that something happened to your parents. How? I looked at the two of them and saw that they were slightly stunned. He said, This is just my guess. After all, my parents are very strong. At that time, the Devil Lord was also destroyed. Looking at all the realms, there shouldn't be anyone who would be their enemy. Then what happened to father and mother? The two little guys asked worriedly. Hauer shook his head. I don't know. We can't get any news about them here. Even if something happened, we won't know. Then let's go. Let's go to that sect. Didn't Big Brother say that there will definitely be a way to leave here and go to other realms? Maybe we could go back from there. Mu Chun said with a trace of eagerness on his little face. Big brother, are we going? You also looked up and asked. Hauer thought for a while and said, Okay, let's prepare to go to that sect and think of a way to go back as soon as possible. As he spoke, he looked at 17 who was waiting at the side and said, Go and prepare some dry food, pastries, and the like. We can eat on the way. Yes, 17 responded and then turned to go out to prepare. They prepared for the whole day. The next morning, when the sky was about to brighten, 17 drove the carriage and led them to leave in the direction of the sect. After seeing them leave, the old man from Huichun Hall, who had been keeping an eye on them, sent a secret guard back to report. He himself followed behind and waited for an opportunity to act. When the owner of Huichun Hall heard the news, he immediately led his people to follow. He guessed that the children must have a treasure on them, so he couldn't let them leave just like that. The carriage went out of the city's western gate and went in the direction of the sect, galloping along the mountain road. Mu Chun and Mu Yu leaned against the car window and looked at the passing scenery outside. The morning breeze was refreshing and gently caressed their faces, making them squint their eyes comfortably and stretch lazily like two kittens. Closed his eyes to rest and didn't say anything along the way. It wasn't until the carriage was some distance away from the city that he suddenly opened his eyes. A cold light flashed across his eyes. Big brother, what's wrong? Mu Chun asked when he saw the cold glint in his eyes. Someone is following us, Hauer said. Hearing this, Mu Chun immediately became vigilant. 17, who was driving the carriage, lowered her voice and asked, Young master, Could it be that Hui Chun Hall offended someone? Let's continue. We'll know when they show themselves, Howard said. He looked at Mu Chun and Mu Yu and said, be alert and be careful. Yes. The two little fellows nodded and sat down obediently. However, with their strength, they were unable to detect that someone was following them in the dark. Along the way, only a few people or carriages and horses would pass by occasionally. When the carriage reached a deserted mountain path, a figure suddenly appeared from behind and stepped on the head of the horse, pulling the carriage, and went down. This, bang. Chapter 45-48. Be careful, 17 exclaimed softly. At the same time, she supported herself with one hand on the carriage and leaned back to catch the falling figure. At the same time, she somersaulted in the air and steadily landed on the ground. After Hao saw that 17 had caught Yu, he pulled Mu Chun and flew a few meters away, landing on the side of the mountain path. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Hao asked and lowered his head to check if the two little guys were injured. No. The two shook their heads. Mu Chen's little face turned cold, and Yu frowned. Although they were not injured, they were suddenly frightened. Anyone would be in a bad mood. Young master, the carriage is destroyed. 17 looked at the broken carriage, and her face tensed up. How? Glanced at the destroyed carriage and turned his gaze to the 8 or 9 people who appeared in front of him. Seeing those people, his eyes moved slightly, because these people were not the people they dealt with that day, but the owner of Rejuvenation Hall. At this time, including him, there were a total of 9 people. Among these 9 people, other than the owner who was a golden core cultivator, the 2 elders beside him were also golden core cultivators, and the remaining people were mid-stage foundation establishment cultivators. Dispatching a few golden core realm cultivators and a few mid-foundation establishment realm cultivators to deal with a few kids like them could already be considered to be extremely generous. After all, the cultivators in this world were generally weak, and these people could be said to be the backbone of the Rejuvenation Hall or even their forces. People from Rejuvenation Hall, what do you want to do? 17 shouted in a deep voice. Haha, the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall chuckled softly. He didn't look at 17, but at Hao. His gaze swept over Hao and then at the 2 little ones. Then he said, I don't want to make things difficult for you children. As long as you leave behind the treasures on you, I can let you leave unharmed. Treasures? Hao's eyes moved and looked at him. What treasures? Haha, what treasures do you have? The eyes of the owner of Rejuvenation Hall flashed, and he stared at him. Brother, didn't the owner of Rejuvenation Hall open such a big medicine store? Why would you be so poor as to rob us? Yu's immature voice carried a bit of surprise. Clearly, she hadn't thought that the people of Rejuvenation Hall would actually be following behind them. Mu Chun snorted coldly, his voice cold with a bit of disdain as he said, Evil intentions, a beast in a human's face. Can it be said that I am a wolf in sheep's clothing? Yu asked while blinking her eyes. Mu Chun thought for a while. It's too easy to be right. Then is he the owner of Rejuvenation Hall? Or bandits blocking the road to rob? Yu curiously asked. The 2 4-year-old children were staring at them and sizing them up as they spoke. Their childish words and innocent gazes made Elder Yuan, who was standing behind the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall, lower his head in shame. He didn't even dare to look at them. Chapter 45-49. Do it. The owner of the Rejuvenation Hall coldly glanced at Hao and the others. With a command, several cultivators behind him rushed forward and rushed towards Hao and the others. 17. Take care, Chun and Yu. Hao said in a cold voice, indicating for them to step back. At the same time, he moved his hand, and a long sword with a cold light appeared in his hand. His spiritual power surged, and the sword Qi instantly attacked. It was like a bolt of lightning that struck towards the cultivators at a speed that was too fast for the ears to cover. Hiss! How is this possible? For a moment, screams accompanied by gasps of pain rang out in disbelief. They originally thought that it was a waste of talent for them to capture a few children. When they made their move, They did not think that these children would be able to avoid it. But who would have thought that How was at the peak of the Golden Core realm? Once his Golden Core aura spread out, whether it was in terms of speed or strength, it crushed those intermediate foundation establishment cultivators. A mere intermediate foundation establishment cultivator against a Golden Core cultivator was like a child against an adult. There was no chance or possibility of fighting back. Moreover, how could they have imagined that this little youth, who was only about 10 years old, had already reached the Golden Core realm? Not to mention those intermediate foundation establishment cultivators. Even the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall and the two elders, who were Golden Core realm cultivators, looked at the little figure in shock and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Golden Core realm cultivator. How is this possible? This child is actually a Golden Core realm cultivator. If it was said that they had suspected that these children had precious treasures on them before, then at this moment, when they saw the Golden Core realm emanating from this little youth, they were very sure that these children definitely had precious treasures on them. Perhaps it was a treasure of heaven and earth that could allow one to advance. Otherwise, based on his age of around 10 years old, how could he have reached the Golden Core stage? Thinking of this, the three people's breathing became heavy. Even Elder Yuan, who felt somewhat ashamed of attacking the children earlier, stared at the three children with light in his eyes and hurried breathing. To be able to reach the Golden Core realm at such a young age, if one were to say that he did not have any heaven and earth treasures or a top cultivation method or treasure on him, they would not believe it no matter what. Not to mention anything else, if they could obtain a top-notch cultivation technique or a treasure that could help them break through to the next level, perhaps their Jindan cultivation would suddenly rise to the next level, and their lifespan would increase again. Thinking of this, the blood in his body could not help but boil. This was really an unexpected surprise. As long as they could take down these children, they would definitely be able to pry open their mouths and get whatever they wanted from them. With how Ur's peak Golden Core strength, she naturally knew that the three Golden Core cultivators' breathing had become rapid and excited. He pursed his lips, the sword in his hand pointing diagonally at the ground. The blade of the sword was so clean that there was not a trace of blood on it, because it was only sword chi that attacked. His indifferent and deep gaze swept across the two dead foundation establishment cultivators on the ground, as well as the four cultivators who were clutching their wounds and retreating in shock. The sword in his hand spun with his hand, and sword shadows shot out. He looked at the owner of the Return of Spring Hall and the two old men and coldly said, "If you leave now, I can pretend that nothing happened." Chapter 4550. How would tighten his grip on his sword. "Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." The little boy held the sword in his hand like a king who held the power of life and death. His tone was domineering and confident, cold and bloodthirsty. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed that this came from the mouth of a 10-year-old boy. Old Man Yuan's eyes moved slightly when he heard this. He looked at the child and said, "Hand over everything. Our master said that you can leave with your lives. You have to know that once you die, you'll have nothing left. Moreover, even if you're a Golden Core cultivator, all three of us are Golden Core cultivators. Not to mention you're only a little youth around the age of 10. How can you fight us? Even if you fight us, you can't beat the three of us alone. Is that so? You can try." Our was unmoved. He stood in front of Mu Chun and Mu Yu and stared at them. The boss of Rejuvenation Hall sneered. "Since you don't know what's good for you, don't blame us for being rude." He then said, "Elder Yuan, Elder He, take them down." "Yes." The two answered and rushed out without hesitation. Long swords appeared in their hands. "How?" Gestured with one hand behind his back, telling Mu Chun and Mu Yu to retreat further. At the same time, his small figure rushed out to meet their attack. Mu Yu was a little worried. Will Big Brother lose? Mu Chun pursed his lips and didn't say anything. His gaze was fixed on the battle in front of him. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he caught sight of the four injured Foundation establishment cultivators quietly approaching them under the hand signal of the Rejuvenation Hall's master. "Be careful. Mu Chun whispered, reminding his sister and 17. However, just as Mu Chun was about to warn them, the Foundation establishment cultivators rushed forward and reached out to grab the two younger ones. They couldn't deal with the big one, but they were more than enough to deal with the two little ones. Get lost, 17 shouted. Her hand on her waist moved. She pulled out her sword and slashed at the Foundation establishment cultivator. However, even though he was strictly trained as a secret guard, it was still difficult for him to fight against a mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivator. He had only just moved when he was kicked away by one of the cultivators. You overestimate yourself. Their hearts were burning with anger. They were just following their boss on a trip, yet they didn't do anything and already lost two people. That was because they didn't expect that little demon to actually be a core formation cultivator. They could accept the fact that they suffered a loss when encountering a core formation cultivator, but this insignificant second layer aura refining cultivator actually dared to attack them. He really overestimated his capabilities. Pooh! 17 was kicked viciously and was sent flying several meters away. He fell into a small forest by the side of the road and spat out a mouthful of blood. He felt a burning pain in his chest and tried to stand up, but he fell back down with a plop. 17, "You exclaimed, and her pair of beautiful eyes angrily glared. Just like a provoked kitten, all the hair on her body stood up. Come with us obediently. A cultivator sneered and extended his hand to grab Ur. But who would have thought that? That little girl actually jumped up and with an extremely fast speed, unexpectedly collided with him. Chapter 45-51. Bang! That cultivator fell straight to the ground, shocking the other three cultivators who wanted to catch Mu Chun. Their expressions changed, and they instinctively retreated, thinking that they had encountered another abnormal golden core cultivator. Unexpectedly, when they retreated, their gazes swept over the two children and found that there was no change in their spiritual aura, nor was there any aura of the golden core stage. Immediately, they let out a light sigh, but also became more cautious. Mu Chun and Mu Yu stood back to back, guarding against a sneak attack. Both of them held daggers in their hands and stared vigilantly at the cultivators. They might be able to take advantage of them when they were unprepared, but if they were to fight head-on, the two of them would not be able to defeat them. In front of them, Hao was surrounded by two golden core cultivators. He relied on his superior martial arts and cultivation methods to suppress them, but when facing two golden core cultivators with rich combat experience, he could not free himself to help Mu Chun and Mu Yu behind him. When he saw the three cultivators surround them, he gritted his teeth and retreated to avoid the attacks of the two golden core cultivators while approaching them. At this moment, when he saw the two golden core cultivators slashing two sword chi towards him, he immediately leaped into the air and landed beside Mu Chun and Mu Yu, leading them to avoid the two attacks. Whoosh! Whoosh! Ah! Hiss! The three cultivators didn't pay attention to the battle on their side. They were focused on the two strange children. However, they didn't expect that by the time they sensed danger, the two sword chi had already attacked them. They couldn't dodge in time. They screamed, and two more people fell. The remaining person had an arm chopped off by the sword chi. Ah, my arm. A bloody arm flew out, drawing an arc in the air and landing beside 17, who was a few meters away. The cultivator who had his arm chopped off staggered a few steps due to the loss of blood and heavy injuries, then fell to the ground and fainted. Looking at the severed arm and smelling the stench of blood in the air, 17 was stunned. She then looked at the three young masters. Seeing that they were fine, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Seeing that the Foundation establishment stage cultivators had all been killed, the remaining three golden core stage cultivators were still a little shaken. It was just a few children, but they had lost so many of their men. For a moment, the two old men felt a trace of fear in their hearts. It would be fine if he could take them down today, but if he couldn't, it would be troublesome. Go to 17, Hao said to the two of them. He had them step back while he walked forward step by step. When the two old men saw this, they attacked again. Their attacks became even more ferocious and ruthless. However, they did not expect the young man's moves to be so strange and unpredictable. Moreover, his attacks were extremely fast. Even though the two old men had used all their strength, they were still unable to take him down. As the battle continued, more and more wounds gradually appeared on their bodies. Perhaps seeing that the two golden core stage cultivators were unable to take him down, the eyes of the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall, who had been watching from the side, flickered. His gaze swept past the three people fighting and landed on the two children behind them. That young man was very concerned about the two young ones. As long as he captured the two young ones, he was not afraid that he would not be captured without a fight. Chapter 45-52. Even though this was a mountain path, there were still some people coming and going. Furthermore, as the battle continued, the airflow surged. Some cultivators who passed by stopped and hid in the distance to watch the battle. What surprised them was that the middle-aged man and the old man were actually dealing with three children. This made them feel somewhat astonished. However, the three of them were all golden core cultivators. That was a height that chi condensation cultivators and foundation establishment cultivators like them couldn't reach. Thus, they didn't dare to meddle in other people's business and only hid in the shadows and watched from afar. I recognized that middle-aged man. He's the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall. Why would they attack the children? A cultivator said in a low voice. Children? Look at that child who's about 10 years old. He has the aura of a golden core cultivator. Furthermore, he's not at a disadvantage when fighting against the two golden core cultivators. Instead, he injured them all over. That's not something an ordinary child can do. That's true. Not to mention that it's not something a child can do. Even a few adults would find it difficult to injure those two. I guess only some elders and sect leaders in the sect can do that. Compared to that, I'm more curious about why the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall wants to attack the children. Another cultivator said in a low voice. His eyes shone as he watched the scene in front of him. None of the cultivators who were hiding to watch the show dared to meddle in other people's business. In fact, they did not even dare to show themselves. They could only hide in the shadows and watch. On the other side, Hauer turned the sharp sword in his hand. A sword flower followed the rotation of the sharp sword and attacked at lightning speed. In almost an instant, the robe of one of the old men who attacked in front of him was shattered by the sword flower. His entire body was also pushed back by the sword chi. Before he could recover, he saw the small figure in front of him and directly hit his chest with a palm. Bang! Pooh! A palm containing the aura of a peak gold core cultivator slammed down and forced the old man back. Hauer watched as the old man was sent flying and coughed out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as paper. Hauer pursed his lips and turned his cold gaze to the other old man. He didn't stop and attacked again. Behind them, the owner of Huichun Hall suddenly rushed forward and reached out to grab Mu Chun and Mu Yu. Seeing this scene, 17, who was on the ground, gritted her teeth and forcefully endured the intense pain from her internal injuries as she leaped up. She stood in front of the two little ones and shouted at the same time, "Hurry up and leave." Scram! The owner of the Return of Spring Hall had a cold look in his eyes. He changed his grip into a slap and slapped 17 away. With a loud bang, 17's body flew out like a kite with a broken string. 17, Mu Chun and Mu Yu exclaimed and quickly ran to where he fell. But this way, the two of them also became the owners of the Return of Spring Hall with their backs facing him, giving him an excellent opportunity to attack. Right when the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall flashed forward, heard the commotion behind him, and he turned around to look. He saw the scene of the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall grabbing towards his younger brother and sister, and his face instantly turned grim while killing intent surged in his eyes. You're courting death. Chapter 45-53. Ello. A wolf howl accompanied by the coercion of a sacred beast was heard. The powerful sound and coercion that seemed to have come from ancient times soared into the sky, causing everyone's eardrums to hurt. Their legs went soft, and they immediately knelt down. The large area was instantly enveloped by a powerful pressure. The birds that were originally perched on the branches fell to the ground with a plop, unable to move. Following the sound of the wolf howl, the surroundings instantly became silent. It was strangely quiet, so quiet that it made one's heart flutter. When the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall, who was about to grab the two children, suddenly heard the wolf howl, he was also shocked. When he turned around to look, the coercion had also enveloped him. He did not even have the chance to escape, and he knelt down with a plop. It was not that he wanted to kneel, but in front of the powerful coercion and the sacred beast that was emitting a terrifying aura, he was so frightened that his legs went soft. He could not stand up even if he wanted to. In the strange silence, a shrill scream suddenly sounded. That scream was miserable and sharp, breaking the silence in that instant. It reverberated in the sky and entered everyone's ears. However, no one made a sound, and no one made any movement. Even the sound of breathing seemed to have stopped. Regardless of whether it was the golden core old man who was heavily injured and was forced to retreat, or Elder Yuan who was standing there with his eyes wide open, or the cultivators who were hiding in the bushes and trees further away to watch the battle, all of them looked at the horrifying scene in front of them in horror. Their hairs stood on end, and they were so shocked that their hearts almost stopped beating. In front of them, a majestic giant silver wolf was stepping on the body of the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall. It bit off one of the owner's arms from his shoulder and threw it to one side. The wolf raised its claws, which were glowing with a sharp light, and tore off the owner's left leg. Fresh blood flowed and seeped into the ground. The bloody and cruel scene caused everyone to be scared silly. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Only the miserable screams of the owner of the return of Spring Hall reverberated in their ears. The silver wolf licked the blood from the corner of its mouth and raised its sharp claws again. This time, it directly pressed down on the body of the person under its claws. A bloodthirsty voice came from its mouth. "Biting off your neck is too easy for you. If it weren't for the fact that I'm afraid of scaring my little masters, I really want to dig out your organs, tear you into pieces, and feed you to the wild beasts in the wilderness." It lowered its voice and lowered its head to whisper into the ear of the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall. Therefore, other than Hao and a few others who were nearby, the people in the distance couldn't hear what it said at all. The bloodthirsty voice and ferocious words frightened the owner of the Rejuvenation Hall so much that he could not say a single word. He did not even have the chance to scream. He looked at the huge silver wolf that was stepping on him with its claws in horror. His eyes were filled with despair and regret. He never thought that the child was not only a golden core cultivator, but also had such a powerful divine beast. As for whether it was a divine beast or a supreme divine beast, to him, there was no difference anymore, because he knew that he was dead for sure, and he would die very miserably. Chapter 45-54. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised the long sword in his hand and stabbed it directly into the man's heart. The boss of the Huichun Hall widened his eyes in horror. He couldn't even scream. He only grunted and blood flowed out of his mouth. His body twitched slightly until he swallowed his last breath. His body stiffened and his eyes were still wide open in horror. Seeing that the human at its feet had died, the silver wolf turned back. Its bloodthirsty gaze fell on the two golden essence elders, and it walked towards them step by step. Anyone who dared to have designs on its little master must die. Howard didn't stop it. He didn't even look at the two elders behind him. He pulled out the long sword, wiped the blood off it, and put it away. Then he walked towards his younger siblings. "It's okay. Don't be afraid." He patted their heads clumsily and comforted them in a low voice. Mu Chun and Mu Yu's originally tense bodies relaxed after hearing their elder brother's voice. It would be a lie to say that they weren't afraid. After all, they were only 4 years old. Even if they learned to kill and face danger, they would still feel fear, and helplessness in their hearts. Old Yuan looked at the huge silver wolf that was walking towards him, and his body couldn't help but tremble. His eyes were filled with despair and regret. If he hadn't followed, If he hadn't listened to Boss Yu's order and attacked the three children, perhaps he wouldn't have to face this scene. Thinking of the boss's limbs being torn off, his heart trembled. Withstanding the strong pressure, he raised his trembling hand, gritted his teeth, and slapped the top of his head. Rather than die without a complete corpse, he might as well end his own life. With a loud bang, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell straight back onto the ground. The silver wolf snorted and exhaled 2 breaths from its nostrils. It glanced at the dead old man and walked towards the other one. Don't eat me. Don't eat me. The other elder was seriously injured. Even if he wanted to escape, he couldn't under the strong and terrifying pressure. He begged for mercy with a pale face, and his eyes were filled with fear and horror. However, Hauer wouldn't allow him to live, and the silver wolf wouldn't allow him to live even more. Thus, the silver wolf stepped forward and raised its claws. A few streams of air slashed at the old man's throat, and several deep claw marks appeared. Blood gushed out as the old man screamed and fell to the ground with his eyes wide open. Looking at this scene, Mu Chun and Mu Yu pursed their lips. Both of them looked at it expressionlessly and took a deep breath. When they saw the silver wolf walking back, the 2 little ones finally came back to their senses and remembered 17, who was seriously injured beside them. Big brother, 17's injury is very serious. She can't walk. Ewer said, looking at 17, who had pale complexion and was staring at the silver wolf in front of her. He seemed to be frightened by the huge silver wolf in front of him. At this time, his body was stiff and he didn't move at all. His eyes didn't even blink. 17. Mu Chun patted 17, who was being supported by them. 17's body tilted and he fell to the ground, unconscious. 17. Mu Chun and Mu Yu were shocked. They thought he was dead and couldn't help but exclaim. Chapter 45-55. Hearing this, Hauer pursed his lips and looked back at the corpses on the ground. He stepped forward and took their cosmos bags and put them into the space. Then he took out a flying device and threw it into the air. He said to the silver wolf, "Bring him up." As he spoke, he pulled Mu Chun and Mu Yu and leaped up. Seeing this, the silver wolf lowered its head and bit 17's collar. It leaped up and sent him up the flying device. At the same time, it shrunk its huge body and stood guard at the side. The frozen cultivators who were further away finally heaved a sigh of relief when they saw the flying device leaving with the children and the wolf. Their legs went soft and they fell to the ground one by one. Looking at the mountain path in front of them that was filled with scattered limbs and corpses, their faces turned pale and they couldn't say a word for a long time. On the other side, Hauer and the others were flying above the clouds in the flying device. At this moment, they were looking at the pale 17 lying on the flying device. The atmosphere was a little heavy. "Big brother, will 17 die?" Ewer asked with reddened eyes. "I don't want him to die." 17 had been with them for so long, and they already had feelings for him. They didn't want him to die like this. "Big brother, are there any pills in the space that 17 can take?" Mu Chun asked as he looked at Hauer. At this moment, Hauer was looking for pills. He found that there were also pills for internal injuries in the cosmos bag of the owner of the rejuvenation hall. Hence, he took one out and stuffed it into 17's mouth. He said to them, "This is the pill from the owner of the rejuvenation hall. I've seen it. Although it's not as good as the pills refined by Mother, it has a good healing effect. Let him eat it first. When we reach the next town, we'll find a doctor to take a look at him." Hearing his words, the 2 little ones looked at 17 to see if his aura would gradually stabilize. The flying device flew in the air. As it disappeared into the clouds, it didn't attract the attention of others. It wasn't until noon when they found that 17's breath was gradually stabilizing that they sighed in relief. "Big brother, that pill is also effective. Give 17 another one." Ewer finally smiled. She thought at least this way 17 won't die. However, Hauer shook his head and said, "Every medicine is 30% poisonous, especially the pills refined in the mortal world. Even if they're considered top grade, they can't be as pure as Mother's pills. Therefore, Now that his breath has stabilized, don't use any more medicine. Wait until he sees a doctor before making any plans. But we don't have a carriage now, and 17 is unconscious. How are we going to enter the city? Mu Chun asked with a frown. Hao thought for a moment and said, after we find the outskirts of the next town, we'll find a place for you to rest. Let the Silver Wolf guard you. I'll go into the city to buy a carriage and bring you in. Why don't I just carry him into the city? It would be troublesome, the Silver Wolf said. That's too conspicuous. Hao shook his head in disagreement. Chapter 45-56. You mean, since we can't keep a low profile, we should keep a high profile? Hao looked at it and asked, yes, the three of you don't have any powerful people protecting you, but you have outstanding looks and temperaments. It's easy for people to target you. Since that's the case, why not keep a high profile? At least, if I show up and follow you, ordinary people won't dare to target you. Even if they do target you, they'll have to think twice. The Silver Wolf looked at them and said, besides, aren't we going directly to that sect to find a way to go back? If we keep a low profile, they won't tell you even if they have a way. Why don't we go there in a high profile? If they ask, we can say that you're the descendants of the upper realm's aristocratic families who came down to the mortal world to gain experience. It's just that you can't go back for some reason. Let them help you. When we go back, we'll thank them with generous gifts. I think it'll be easier. How? Couldn't help but think when he heard this. He seriously thought about the Silver Wolf's idea. After a while, he said, what you said makes sense. It's just that I'm worried that before Dad and Mom arrive, we'll arrive at Dad and Mom's enemy's house. Then, if that's the case, they might find out about you if we cause a big commotion. The Silver Wolf looked at the three of them and said, however, this is indeed a little risky, but I think there's no better way. Hao was silent for a while. He looked at Mu Chun and Mu Yu and asked, what do you think? The two little ones looked at each other and said, we'll listen to Big Brother. Hao paused and said, then let's do as the Silver Wolf says. Because what it said makes sense. It appeared today, and it won't be long before the various forces on Floating Fate Immortal Island know about it. Instead of that, it's better for us to appear in a high profile. Okay, the two little ones nodded. Thus, they went straight out of the city and got off the aircraft. The Silver Wolf carried 17 to the city gate while the three children followed at the side. Wolf. This is a ferocious beast. It's not a ferocious beast. This is a spiritual beast. This is a spiritual beast that has been contracted. This isn't an ordinary spiritual beast. This is the king of wolves, the Silver Wolf, and a divine beast at that. No one on the Floating Fate Immortal Island had ever seen a divine beast before. Therefore, when they saw such a huge wolf appear in front of them, they were all guessing and retreating. They looked on in fear and reverence. Even the city guards did not dare to stop them and allowed them to enter. There were no obstructions along the way. Hao found someone to ask for the name of the best medical clinic in the city and went on his way. As they entered the city, all the clans and forces in the city, whether underground or on the surface, heard that a huge silver wolf had entered the city. Even the city lord was alarmed. I heard that a giant wolf entered the city, and it wasn't a ferocious beast, but a spirit beast. Is that true? An ancestor of a clan was alarmed and hurried out to ask. It's true, father. All the powers in the city have received the news that a huge silver wolf, several meters tall, entered the city with a black-clothed man. Beside them were three extremely beautiful children. At this time, they have already gone to the Mo family's medical center. The middle-aged man hurriedly said to his father. Chapter 45-57. What are you talking about? I'll go with you to take a look. As the old man spoke, he walked out and asked, what rank is that silver wolf? Didn't you get the news? Apart from the three children, are there no strong people protecting them? The middle-aged man followed closely beside him and said, Father, it's not like you don't know what kind of high-rank spirit beasts have appeared in our area. Even if there were, I don't think anyone would be able to recognize the silver wolf's rank. But I heard from the people in the city that the wolf's aura and aura were very intimidating. I reckon it's not an ordinary spirit beast." The father and son spoke as they hurried out. At the same time, the other aristocratic families in the city were also alarmed. They all planned to personally see what was going on. Even the city lord didn't care about anything else and personally went to the M.O. Family's Medical Center. At this time, the entrance of the M.O. Family's Medical Center was tightly packed. There was no one else inside except for Hao and the shrunken silver wolf. As for the people outside, they couldn't enter even if they wanted to. "Doctor, take a look at his injuries," said as his gaze fell on the unconscious 17. Because their movements were too loud, the one who came out was the old master of the M.O. Family's Medical Center. Even at his age, when he saw such a silver wolf for the first time, he was also a little frightened. Naturally, he didn't dare to be careless and carefully examined 17. After a while, he said, "His internal organs are injured. He should have taken a pill to treat internal injuries, but it can only stabilize the internal injuries and can't heal them. Even if I give him medicine and let him drink it for more than 10 days, I'm afraid he will be crippled by the time he recovers." "Crippled?" Mu Chun frowned and asked. "You have no way to treat him?" Old Mo shook his head. "His injuries were caused by a golden core cultivator, and his internal organs are injured. How can ordinary medicine treat him? Unless—" His voice paused, and he didn't say anything else, only sighing softly. "Unless what?" you were asked. Old Mo glanced at Ewer, and then at Hao. "Unless there's a miracle pill, otherwise, even if he recovers, he will have a chronic illness and become a cripple." Hao-er's eyes flickered. Originally, he thought that if the medicinal pills he got from Huichun Hall would improve his condition after taking them, then he would use Huichun Hall's medicinal pills. After all, he didn't have many medicinal pills left for internal injuries from his mother. If he still couldn't find a way to go back, and if something happened to Mu Chun and Mu Yu, he wouldn't know what to do if he didn't have the medicinal pills with him just in case. However, after hearing the doctor's words, he knew that if he wanted to save 17, he could only use his mother's medicinal pills. "Doctor, we need to recuperate here for a few days. Do you have a place for us to recuperate?" Howard asked directly. Hearing this, Elder Hiroshi was startled. He thought for a moment and nodded. "There is, but the place is not big. It's just a small courtyard at the back." But he looked at the silver wolf at the side with some worry. "Don't worry, it won't hurt anyone." Howard knew what he was worried about and said, "As long as no one has bad intentions towards us, it won't hurt anyone. So I don't have to worry that it will cause trouble here." Chapter 4558. Elder Hiroshi ordered people to carry 17 to a room in the small courtyard at the back and wrote a prescription for someone to brew the medicine. At the same time, he ordered people to disperse the curious crowd in front of the medical center. However, he didn't expect that after settling the children and the others, he heard that the city lord had come to visit, as well as the various family heads and people in power in the city were all heading to the medical center. Old master, the city lord is here. He's sitting outside. The patriarchs and patriarchs of the various clans in the city are also here." An apprentice alchemist from the medical hall quickly reported with a nervous expression. Beside him, a middle-aged man heard and looked at old Master Mo, saying, "Father, why don't I go out and take a look? I'll go with you." Old Master Mo sighed softly and said, "They probably want to see those children." The two of them walked out. When they arrived at the outer room, they saw that it was crowded with people standing and sitting. Originally, because of the sudden arrival of those children and the frightening silver wolf, the medical center had a resting sign outside. However, it still couldn't stop the leaders of the various forces in the city from coming to visit. Old Master Mo, the city lord, smiled and went forward to greet him. "City lord." After Old Master Mo bowed, he cupped his hands and bowed to the others. "You're all here too. You really bring light to my small medical center." "Hee, Old Master Mo, what are you saying?" One of the old men smiled and said, "We heard that a few amazing people came to the city and even brought a rare silver wolf. Naturally, we wanted to come and see what was going on." Old Master, son, I'm afraid this won't do. Old Master Immerse sighed softly and said, those people are now staying in our backyard to recuperate. They've already told us that they don't want to be disturbed. So to hearing this, everyone looked at each other. One of them asked again, I wonder, in Old Master Mo's opinion, what rank of spirit beast is that silver wolf? Did they say which family they are from? Or which sect they are from? Why are they here? Hee, this is a medical center. We're only responsible for treating illnesses and injuries. How can we ask about other things? I really don't know the answer to your question. Old Master Immerse waved his hand and said, since it's in your backyard, it shouldn't be a problem for us to take a look, right? Another person said tentatively, it's not that I want to stop you, but I'm worried about you. As Elder Immerse spoke, he looked at them and said, that silver wolf is guarding the courtyard. One of the young masters has already said that if we don't provoke them, the silver wolf will not harm anyone. But if we provoke them, it's hard to say. Hearing those words, some of the people who originally wanted to go and check it out immediately hesitated. As the city lord and the host of this place, I would like to invite them to stay in the city lord's mansion to recuperate. The city lord smiled and looked at Old Master Immerse. Old Master Immerse, can I trouble you to send someone to pass on a message? Why don't we ask for their opinion? Old Master Immerse paused for a moment, then said, all right, please wait for a while, City Lord. I'll ask them myself. With that, he let his son entertain the people and went to the backyard himself. In the backyard, when Howard heard Old Master Mo's words, he looked at him and asked, are we causing trouble for you by recuperating here? It's no use. It's just that everyone is very curious about the young masters and the others, so. Chapter 45-59. When the city lord and the others who were sitting outside saw a young man in a small black robe walk out, surprise flashed across their eyes. This was because this young man was emitting the strength of a golden core stage cultivation. Perhaps this strength was not very shocking. After all, the people present were all leaders of various forces, so they naturally had the strength of a golden core realm cultivator. However, when this strength and grade appeared on a child around the age of 10, it was naturally shocking. This was because it was somewhat impossible. No matter how talented a person was, it was impossible for a 10-year-old to reach the power of a golden core cultivator. However, this child in front of them really had the power of a golden core cultivator. This made them take him seriously and shocked him. Looking at this young boy again, his every move exuded a noble aura that could not be concealed. Obviously, his background was extremely noble. Looking at his face again, it was very outstanding. However, although he was young, the aura on his body was somewhat cold. When they looked to the side and saw the snow-white silver wolf, almost everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and stood up abruptly. This is a divine beast? No, it's a divine beast. The city lord said in a trembling voice. When he saw the silver wolf glance at him, his legs trembled slightly. Howard glanced at them. There was no expression on his cold little face. Even though he was only around 10 years old, in front of these people in power, he did not show the slightest bit of fear. Instead, he was indifferent and calm, looking at them with the gaze of a superior. What are you looking for me for? Howard asked coldly. His gaze fell on them. At this moment, the city lord regained his senses and hurriedly lowered his posture. He cupped his hands and said, I am the city lord of this city. I would like to invite young master and the rest to the city lord's residence to recuperate as a host. What do you think, young master? Howard paused for a moment and said, my guard is injured and does not want to move at the moment. After a few days, when his injuries have recovered, we will go to the city lord's residence to stay for a few days. Originally, he did not plan to do so. However, when he came out, the silver wolf told him that since they were already high profile here, there was no need to go to that sect. He believed that as the news spread, that sect would definitely send people over. At that time, he would just go with them. The city lord originally didn't have much hope, but he didn't want to hear him say that. He was instantly overjoyed and hurriedly said, good. Then when I go back, I'll have people prepare the small courtyard and wait for the young masters to come. As he spoke, he said to Elder Imo, who was at the side, Elder Imo, use the best medicine for the young master's injuries. You must let him recover as soon as possible. Don't worry, City Lord. This old man understands. He nodded. When the others saw this, they didn't say anything else. They only followed the young man and the silver wolf inside. Then, they looked at the City Lord and said, City Lord, this person is obviously not an ordinary person. I wonder where he came from. That's a sacred beast. Its strength is above that of a sacred beast. It's definitely not something that can appear in a place like ours. I guess these people are from the upper realm. An old man said as he stroked his beard thoughtfully. Chapter 4560. Let's go back first. Don't disturb them here. Elder Mo's place is also a place for business. It's not appropriate for us to stay here. The City Lord looked at them and said, Everyone, follow me to the City Lord's mansion for a cup of tea. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other and followed him to the City Lord's mansion. After they left, the medical center gradually quieted down. Elder Imo took a look and sighed softly. He told his son to keep an eye on things and went to the back. In a small courtyard at the back, this was originally the place where the old man researched medicine in his free time. Now that they were allowed in, he had instructed the people in the Imo family's medical hall not to disturb them here. Therefore, it was very quiet here. At this time, the silver wolf was guarding outside while the 3 children were inside the room. Looking at 17 lying on the bed, took out a pill and stuffed it into his mouth. After he swallowed it, he said to Mu Chun and Mu Yu, Mother gave 17 these pills to treat his internal injuries. After giving him one, there are only 2 left. Hearing this, the 2 children finally understood why their big brother didn't directly give 17 the pills their mother refined. It turned out that they were almost used up. Big brother, we'll be careful. We won't get hurt. Muyu promised seriously, not wanting her brother to worry. Yes, we won't let ourselves get hurt. Big brother, don't worry. Perhaps we'll be able to go back and see father and mother soon. In the future, we'll just ask mother to give us some pills to protect ourselves, Muchin added. Howard nodded and said to them, When 17's injuries are better, we will stay in the City Lord's mansion for a few days. We don't have to travel all the way. I believe that the people from the sect will also hear the news. When they send people over, we will follow them. He told the 2 children some things to take note of and let them rest first. Due to their high-profile entrance into the city, a commotion was stirred up in the city. Just as Silver Wolf and had expected, even the Floating Fate Celestial Sect had heard the news. The sect leader of the Floating Fate Celestial Sect had brought along 2 elders and 2 peak masters. 3 days later, in the clinic, Elder Imo was taking 17's pulse. When he felt his pulse, he couldn't help but feel surprised. His eyes moved slightly as he carefully checked 17's pulse again. Finally, he looked at with a complicated expression. Did young master give him some kind of pill? Elder Imo asked. Glanced at him and replied, Yes, I gave him a medicinal pill to treat internal injuries. How is his injury now? The Dan you fed him must be extremely valuable. Even such a serious injury has healed 60 to 70% in 3 days. How unbelievable. He sighed softly, his voice was full of shock. He glanced at them and said, He has already taken that miraculous pill. Even if he doesn't drink the medicine this old man prescribed, he will recover in a few days. Now, he can get out of bed and walk around without any problems. 3 days. It had only been 3 days. He hadn't come to see him for 3 days, but his injuries had almost recovered. If he hadn't personally treated this person, he wouldn't have believed that he could recover so quickly. Chapter 4561. Since it's like this, let's go to the City Lore Mansion today, Howard said. He looked at him and said, Sorry to disturb you for these few days. As he spoke, he took out some gold coins. This is the medical fee and the cost of recuperating here for these few days. Seeing this, old Imo didn't decline and took the gold coins. He said, Then I'll send someone to the City Lord Mansion to ask them to send a carriage over. Okay, sorry to trouble you. Howard replied. After watching him leave, he looked at 17 and said, "Let's stay in the City Lord Mansion for a few days and recuperate while we're at it." "Young master, aren't we in a hurry? 17 has already wasted a lot of time. If we... It's fine." Howard interrupted him and said, "Just do as I say. Now, you don't have to think about anything else. Recuperate first." "Yes," 17 replied and thanked again. Many thanks to the three masters for giving 17 such precious pills. 17, it's good that you're fine. You still have to follow us. Don't die too easily. You were said with a smile. She clapped her hands and said, "How about this? Big brother, let's teach 17 how to escape. This way, even if he can't defeat others, he can still escape." Hearing this, 17 hurriedly shook his head. No. I'm here to protect the three masters. If there's danger, how can I escape alone? I won't learn that." From a moment he acknowledged them as his masters, his life was theirs. How could he learn how to escape when there's danger? That was too wrong. Howard looked at him and said, "We'll talk about other things later. Recuperate first." After the city lord received the news from the Mo clan, he personally led people in a carriage to the medical center to receive them. He led them to a courtyard prepared in the city lord mansion to rest. Because of the city lord's earlier instructions, at this time, even if the people in the city lord mansion were curious, they didn't dare to disturb them. After staying in the city lord mansion for 2 days, the city lord came to the courtyard with the excuse of sending medicinal herbs. He said with a smile, "Young master, you've been here for 2 days, but we still don't know how to address you." Howard said, "Our surname is Xianyuan." "Xianyuan?" "Xianyuan is an ancient surname, and you can't find a single family with this surname on the floating fate Immortal Island. I wonder if young Master Xianyuan is from the Upper Realm?" he asked cautiously. "That's right." Howard nodded. "We are indeed from the Upper Realm." Even though he had already guessed it, when he heard it from Xuanyuan's mouth, he still couldn't help but feel excited. Thus, he bent over and put on a flattering smile on his face, and carefully said, "Young Master Xianyuan, as you can see, the people here rarely have the chance to come in contact with or know about the Upper Realm. I wonder if you can tell me a little about it." "What do you want to know?" Howard asked. The city lord was overjoyed and immediately asked, "Are all the powerhouses in the Upper Realm above the Golden Elixir stage? Were spirit beasts everywhere? Were there as many experts as there were clouds? How can people like us go to the Upper Realm?" Chapter 4562. Yes, but they only bring some children up there. They won't let people like us go to the Upper Bound. The city lord said and bowed respectfully to him. "Young Master Xianyuan, please give me some pointers on how to go to the Upper Bound. Those who are strong can break through the void and travel. Otherwise, there are transmission scrolls. Another way is for you to cultivate to the Upper Bound and receive you." But Howard paused. He looked at Yi Futian and said, "With your strength, you can be the lord of the city here. But once you go up, if you offend a strong cultivator, you'll be killed with a flick of a finger. Moreover, you're too weak to be a guard, let alone a city lord. Even those who are weaker than you are from some clans, and have people backing them. So I don't recommend you go to the upper world." Hearing this, the city lord was startled. For a moment, he was silent and did not speak. After being a city lord for so long and having lived for so long, he naturally knew that everything was not so easy. But in the end, there was still some unwillingness in his heart. How? He did not continue this topic. Instead, he said, "We will wait here for the people from the sect to come. If they come, bring them to see us." "Young master, you're waiting for the people from the sect?" The city lord was startled. "Yes." He nodded and did not say more. Seeing this, the city lord said, "Okay, I understand. If they come, I will bring them to see young master." With that, he bowed and left first. Another 10 days passed. On this day, after Mu Chun and Mu Yu finished practicing in the courtyard, they sat in the courtyard. The two pursed their lips and did not speak. They only clutched their beating hearts in their chest, thinking about something. These days, their symptoms did not change, but they gradually got used to it and endured it. But when they thought that this could be related to their parents, they were still worried. "Brother, do you think something will happen to father and mother?" Ewer could not help but ask softly. "I don't think so." Big Brother said that they are very strong people, Muchon said. When the silver wolf who was lying in the courtyard heard their words, it stood up and stretched. It walked to the two of them and said, "They will be fine. Your parents are very powerful people. No one can hurt them. Besides, even if something happens, it won't last for so long." As he spoke, the silver wolf glanced at the two of them and said, "Because of your blood relationship, you still haven't been able to break through the blood curse. But don't worry too much. Once you see your parents, they will think of a way to help you break the blood curse." My big brother said that we also have very powerful contract beasts inside our body. Ewer said, then looking at Silver Wolf, she asked, "Are they more powerful than you?" Hearing this, the Silver Wolf snorted, "Not as powerful as me. I'm the king of wolves, the Silver Wolf. Whether it's in terms of combat power or speed, I'm not inferior to the ancient mythical beasts." At this point, its voice paused, and it secretly curled its lips. The ancient divine beast, it had lost because of this title. But in terms of combat power, it definitely didn't think that it was inferior to the Cheelin and the nine-tailed fox. Chapter 4563. Who are you? The guard saw that they had an extraordinary aura and did not dare to be rude. The person who knocked on the door took out his waist token and handed it over. The guard looked at it and hurriedly bowed before opening the door to let them in. At the same time, he whispered a few words to the other guard beside him, telling him to go in and report. The city lord was walking to the front yard, thinking young Master Xin Yuan said that the people from the sect would come. However, I haven't seen them for so many days. Will they really come? Just as he was thinking, the housekeeper hurried in and asked, "What's wrong? Don't be so flustered." Master, the immortal sect, the people from the immortal sect are here." The housekeeper quickly said and ran in, panting. Hearing this, the city lord was shocked. He lifted his robe and walked forward, saying, "Get someone to prepare tea first. I will personally invite them in." On the way, he met a few people. When he saw them, his heart skipped a beat. He quickly cupped his hands and bowed. "I didn't expect the sect master to come in person. Sorry for the lack of manners. Please come in." "Ha ha ha, City Lord Gong. I trust you have been well since we last met." The old man smiled and returned the greeting. He then walked in with the city lord. When they sat down in the hall, the sect master introduced them, saying, "These two are the second elder and the third elder. These two are the peak masters of our sect. We rushed over after hearing the news. We also want to ask the city lord if the rumors outside are true." "Of course it is true," the city lord said. "Now, those young masters are living in the city lord's mansion. They also have a super divine bee silver wolf with them." "Oh, it's true? It seems that they must be from the upper realm," the sect master said with surprise in his eyes. He then asked, "Does the city lord know how they got here? Which part of the upper realm did they come from?" "I don't know. How about this? I will ask someone to invite those young masters over and let them talk," the city lord said, and was about to ask the housekeeper to invite them over. The sect master thought for a moment and looked at the two elders sitting below him. He said, "Let's go see them. I'll have to trouble the city lord to introduce us." Seeing this, the city lord did not say anything. He also stood up and said, "All right, everyone, this way, please." "How?" Was guiding Mu Chun and Mu Yu in their cultivation in the courtyard. 17 was learning from him, and the silver wolf was watching from the side. Perhaps it sensed that someone was coming, so it turned its head to look outside the courtyard, and 2 breaths came out of its nose. When Hao and the others saw this, they stopped and looked outside the courtyard. Not long after, the city lord brought a few people to the courtyard and said, "Young Master Xin Yuan, the sect leader, 2 elders, and 2 peak leaders are here. Please come in." 17 stepped forward to welcome them. When the few people from the sect entered the small courtyard, their gazes naturally landed on the silver wolf lying on the side. With one look, they were secretly shocked. He had heard rumors that it was a sacred beast, but he didn't expect it to be true. That silver wolf just lay there, its aura restrained, but it was enough to make people tremble in fear, not daring to be the slightest bit presumptuous. Chapter 45-64. How glanced at them, then looked at the city lord and said, "City lord, I want to talk to them." Hearing this, the city lord said, "Okay, you guys talk. I'll get someone to bring you some tea." With that, he left first. "Little lord, your surname is Xinyuan?" After introducing himself and the people around him, the sect leader looked at the young boy in front of him and asked. He looked at him, then at the twins beside him, and was surprised. 3 such young children, but there was only one weak guard by their side. However, that silver wolf was already comparable to many strong cultivators. What kind of family would allow such young children to come to the lower realm? "That's right," Howard replied and said directly, "We're from the upper realm." Hearing this, their expressions changed slightly. They had already guessed it, so they were not very surprised when they heard him say so. However, from the looks of it, he knew very well that they would come. "Since you're from the upper realm, why are you here? Also, what do you want to talk to us about, little lord?" The sect leader asked. "I heard that your sect can contact the upper realm and send people up. I want to ask for your help to send us to the upper realm," Howard said. He looked at the sect leader and said, "After this matter is done, there will be great rewards." The sect leader and the others looked at each other, and one of the elders asked doubtfully, "Since you're from the upper realm and can come here, you must have a way to go back. Why do you need our help?" Howard paused for a moment before saying, "We came here by accident and lost contact with our families, so we can't go back by ourselves." "If that's the case, which upper realm family are you from? Perhaps we can ask someone to inform you on your behalf." As the sect leader spoke, he looked at them and smiled bitterly. "To tell you the truth, the immortal emissaries from the upper realm come here to pick people to go to the upper realm. It's up to them to decide how many and who to bring. Even if I'm a sect leader, I can't say anything." Hearing this, Howard frowned and was silent for a moment. If that was the case, it would be a little troublesome. "In that case, we'll go with you to the sect and wait. When the immortal emissary comes, we'll tell him ourselves." As the silver wolf spoke, he stood up and stretched. He walked toward them step by step. Seeing that they were slightly leaning back nervously, he looked down at them and said, "My little master's parents are extremely noble. Since you have helped them this time, you will naturally repay them in the future." Hearing this, the faction leader and the others looked at each other as if they were thinking about something. Finally, they said, "All right then, follow us back to the sect. No matter what, there is nothing wrong with forming good karma." Moreover, this young boy in front of him was already at the peak of the Jindan stage at the age of 10. It was conceivable that his parents must be even more powerful. As a result, they did not stay here for long. After discussing, they prepared to bring Howard and the others back to the sect. However, to their surprise, just as they were packing up and preparing to leave, they saw the city lord enter with an ugly expression. He looked at Howard and the others with a grave expression. Chapter 45-65. The city lord looked at him as if he was afraid that he didn't know what kind of power it was. He said, "I know this rejuvenation hall. It's a hall that specializes in medicinal herbs and pills. They come from the Ruan family of Lingnan and are very powerful." "Are they from the Ruan family of Lingnan?" The sect master frowned slightly and looked at Howard and the others. He asked, "Do you have a grudge with them? Some time ago, we killed the owner of Rejuvenation Hall and some of their people," said indifferently. His voice didn't fluctuate. "I didn't expect that they would dare to come." The silver wolf snorted and said, "I'll go out and tidy up." As he spoke, he walked out. An elder at the side saw that no matter if it was the 3 children or the guard called 17, they all had indifferent expressions. There was no worry or panic. He couldn't help but ask, "Why do you have a grudge with them?" Ira raised her small face and said with a smile, "They are bad people. They wanted to catch us, so Big Brother killed them all." Hearing this, they understood. So it was like that. Hundreds of people fought. Swords and sabers have no eyes. You all should hide inside first. We'll go out and take a look. As the sect master spoke, he led the people behind him and walked out. However, as soon as they left, Howard and the others also followed them out. At this time, there was a black mass outside the city lord's mansion. Hundreds of cultivators surrounded the city lord's mansion, and behind them were some people in the city who came to watch the show. So at a glance, there really weren't an ordinary number of heads. "Hand over the person who killed my son." A malicious voice filled with killing intent, mixed with the aura of spiritual power spread in the air. "Hand him over. Hand him over." Those cultivators held swords and sabers in their hands and pointed at the sky. Their voices were so loud that it hurt people's eardrums. "Does City Lord Gong want to go against my Yuan family of Lingnan?" The old man who spoke saw that the gate of the city lord's mansion was tightly shut and there was no movement at all. He couldn't help but be angry. Yuan family of Lingnan. Suddenly, a deep and dignified voice with a bloodthirsty aura was heard. At that moment, everyone only saw a light flash in front of them. They looked over and saw a majestic silver wolf standing on the wall of the city lord's mansion, looking down at them from above. That bloodthirsty voice came from its mouth. "Do you want to die without an intact corpse? Or do you want to exterminate your family? Or obediently turn around and leave now?" "Hiss, divine beast. How is that a divine beast? This is a divine beast. I didn't expect that the rumors were true. Seeing that, some families as mansion people, S's family T's. They were of the sect of T, of people of the city lords. TTT of them, of 8TT of people of them. The old man in the lead, the old master of the Yuan family, held a black walking stick in his hand. When he looked at that silver wolf, his eyes flashed as if he had found a prey. As early as 10 days ago, he received news that his third son had died. Moreover, his death was extremely tragic. It was said that he was torn apart by a divine beast. Chapter 45-66. 3 children, a weak guard, but a divine beast, even a sacred beast, followed by a contract beast. After much consideration, he decided to bring people here. If he could capture those children, he would be able to deal with the sacred beast. If he could make a contract with it, then, thinking of this, he was excited, and the blood in his body rose and fell. This was an opportunity for the Yuan family of Lingnan. Wealth came from danger. Even if there were risks and some people would be sacrificed, what if it succeeded? The gate of the city lord's residence opened at this moment, and a few people from the sect walked out. The leader looked at the old master of the Yuan family, and his eyes flashed. "Long time no see, Elder Yuan." "Oh, I didn't expect you to be here too." He lifted his eyelids and glanced at the leader. "If you don't want to be enemies with the Yuan family of Lingnan, you'd better disperse." As he spoke, his gaze swept past the few people beside the leader, the city lord who walked out from behind, and Howard, Mu Chun, and Mu Yu who followed behind him. When he saw the 3 of them, his eyes flashed. He knew that instead of dealing with the wolf, it was better to think of a way to capture the 3 children first. Then, would the silver wolf be able to fight with them? He made arrangements and gave a look to the few people who were scattered around, telling them to act according to the situation. "Elder Yuan, they're the honored guests of the sect. I hope you can stop now and leave with the people of the Yuan family. Otherwise, if we fight, I'm afraid the losses will outweigh the gains," the leader said. He didn't want to see the scene of the 2 sides fighting, because that would definitely be a bloody scene. "How can I just let them off after killing people of the Yuan family?" he said with a cold face, and the walking stick in his hand slammed heavily on the ground. His action seemed to be a signal that had been given a long time ago. At the same time, a few people who were scattered among the 100 cultivators suddenly rushed toward the 3 children. When the leader and the others in front saw this, they naturally couldn't let the 3 children be captured. When they were about to appear, Howard shouted from behind, "Silver Wolf." As soon as his voice fell, the silver wolf that was standing on top of the wall a moment ago swept past like a ray of cold light, directly pouncing down and biting off the necks of the few people who rushed forward. Blood flowed everywhere, and the smell of blood spread in the air. This sudden scene caused the sect leader and the others to stiffen. The silver wolf's speed was too fast. It was so fast that they could only see the cold light flashing by. They didn't even have time to react. Ah! Hiss! Shrill screams pierced through the clouds and reverberated in everyone's ears. The few cultivators who rushed forward were all gold core cultivators, but they died under the silver wolf's feet, just like that. Those people's necks were all bitten off. Those who couldn't break their necks in time were directly stepped on by the silver wolf's claws. The silver wolf raised its claws again, and blood spurted out. Their breaths were instantly cut off. Howard walked out from behind and stood beside the silver wolf. He stared coldly at the old master of the Rouen clan. Do you want to die, or do you want to live? Chapter 45-67. Brave men are bound to be attracted by a large sum of money. The cultivators who wanted to retreat gritted their teeth and rushed forward after hearing the words of the Rouen clan's old master. They wanted to take advantage of the chaos to attack the two children. When Hal heard this, his face turned cold. He immediately said to the silver wolf, "Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive." "Oh!" The silver wolf raised its head and howled angrily. The pressure of a sacred beast was released from its body, and those who had rushed forward all froze in place. Some of them knelt down with a plop sound, while some stood there motionless, unable to even move their legs. The entire sky was filled with a powerful pressure. Regardless of whether it was the people from the sect or the people from the Rouen family, this pressure was a powerful existence that none of them could resist. Even the Rouen clan's old master was shocked by the pressure. His body froze in place. His eyes were wide open and his lips trembled. His face was filled with fear. At this moment, he finally knew why his son died so miserably. Even though he was already a nascent soul cultivator, under such a strong pressure, he could not resist at all. As the silver wolf pounced forward, it raised its sharp claws and opened its jaws to bite. The cultivators who were unable to move under the pressure screamed miserably one after another. One after another, their corpses fell to the ground. As blood splashed out, the air was filled with an extremely heavy stench of blood. The surrounding people looked at the corpses that fell one after another. They looked at the cultivators whose throats were slashed by the wolf's claws or bitten off their necks. They looked at the blood that splashed on the ground like red plum blossoms. They could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. They were so shocked that they did not even dare to breathe. Especially the Rouen clan's old master. He looked at the scene in front of him in fear. He could not believe that the silver wolf's fighting power and pressure were so strong. It was so powerful. Just one pressure was enough to suppress them. Even if he was a nascent soul cultivator, he could not escape from it. Fear and regret intertwined in his heart. He panted heavily and held the walking stick in his hand. He could not say a word. When the immortal sect disciples saw this, they wanted to open their mouths several times. However, when they saw the cold face of the little boy beside them and the killing intent in his eyes, they couldn't bring themselves to say anything. His killing intent had already been aroused. Even if they begged for mercy, he probably would not let them off. Furthermore, he had already given them a chance previously. However, even for them, this was the first time they had seen such a terrifying battle prowess of a sacred beast. In less than half an incense stick's worth of time, the hundreds of cultivators that the Rouen clan had brought died one by one in front of the city lord's mansion. In the end, only the Rouen clan's old master was left standing. However, no one thought that he would survive. That was because the giant silver wolf was standing right in front of him. "How do you want to die?" The silver wolf mockingly looked at the pale old man and said, "Why don't you do the same as your dead son, and let you have a taste of his death?" As he spoke, the silver wolf lifted its leg and stomped him to the ground. At the same time, the wolf's sharp claws pressed against his arm. This scared him so much that he finally screamed. Chapter 45-68. One of his arms was torn off, and before the old man could even scream, one of his legs was also bitten off. However, this time, his body only twitched a few times, and he couldn't even scream. The wolf's claws that were stepping on his dantian pressed down on his body. Although the person on the ground was not dead, he was not far from death. At this moment, the old man from the Ruan family opened his mouth and blood flowed out. In the next moment, a ball of light flew out from his body and tried to escape. Want to escape? Oomph. The silver wolf glanced at the small ball of light that escaped. It leaped and directly opened its mouth to eat the ball of nascent soul. Seeing this scene, the few people from the immortal sect swallowed their saliva. Their pale faces and force-calm expressions showed that this scene brought great shock to them. The silver wolf turned around and looked at the city lord. Get someone to take everything from them and give it to my master. Yes, yes. The city lord wiped his sweat and felt that the pressure in the air had dissipated. He hurriedly got someone to collect the things on the people on the ground and then handed them all to Hao-Er. Because the silver wolf was standing there watching, no one dared to do anything. After handing the things to Hao-Er, the city lord got someone to deal with the corpses on the ground. Seeing this, Hao-Er took out 2 Chinquan bags and handed them to the city lord. The things in these 2 bags are a thank you gift for your care during this period of time. The city lord, who was about to decline, saw him looking at him and changed his mind. He hurriedly said, "Thank you, young master. Let's go." Hao-Er looked at the sect master and asked, "Do you all ride on swords or flying devices?" "We ride on swords," said the sect master. "However, we can bring you along. Then I'll have to trouble you." Hao-Er did not plan to ride on swords himself. It would be more convenient if someone brought them along. Therefore, he looked at the silver wolf and did not say anything. The silver wolf also knew what he meant. It immediately turned into a ray of light and entered his body. Seeing this, the sect leader and the others secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did they fly on their swords and lead them back to the sect. Perhaps it was because the scene here was too bloody. The strength of the silver wolf almost completely crushed the people. Because of this, all the people who originally had some thoughts were all shocked, and no one dared to have any ideas about them. When the children arrived at the sect, everything went on as usual. They were just waiting for the people from the upper realm to arrive, waiting for an opportunity to return. On the other side, as the days passed, the heavenly thunder did not stop at Xianyuan Mo's. There was a heavenly thunder every day, and every heavenly thunder brought him great pain and injury. On this day, on the mountain peak, Fengjiu looked at Xianyuan Mo's, who was sitting cross-legged with almost no skin on his body, and his heart clenched tightly in pain. If this goes on, he won't be able to bear it. He will die, muttered Fengjiu. Her voice was a little hoarse and choked with sobs. Suddenly, she turned around and looked at Tianjizi. She asked in a hoarse voice, "Will he not be able to bear it? Is that why you came?" Tianjizi pursed his lips and did not speak. He just looked ahead and sighed softly. Chapter 45-69. Seeing that she was about to step forward, Tianjizi immediately opened his hand, and a seal seemed to appear on his palm as his fingers rotated. Fengjiu didn't even have time to react or defend herself. He patted her on the back and said, "I've already said that this tribulation can only be passed by himself. No one can help him." Fengjiu couldn't move. Her originally anxious and worried heart suddenly turned into anger. "What are you doing? Untie me." Tianjizi looked at the churning clouds in the sky and sighed softly. Today is the 49th day of the 49th day, the 49th bolt of heavenly lightning. After saying that, he looked at Xianyuan Mo's, who had been struck by the heavenly lightning, with no part of his body intact. His eyes were filled with regret. Fengjiu's heart sank, and her hoarse voice was somewhat bitter. "What do you mean? Are you trying to tell me that he won't be able to survive today?" As if to confirm her words, a muffled thunder rumbled in the sky. She looked up at the sky and found that the heavenly lightning had already struck down yesterday, but today's heavenly lightning still hadn't struck down. The clouds in the sky were also churning more and more. Her heart was filled with uneasiness and even panic. Her eyes were filled with anxiety as she shouted, "Let me go! Let me go!" At the same time, she used the spiritual power in her body to try to break out of her frozen body. "Look in front." Tianjizi stood beside her and motioned for her to look at Xianyuan Mo's in front of her. Fengjiu looked in front of her and couldn't help but be startled. She saw that 9 bolts of lightning had appeared around the place where he was sitting cross-legged. The 9 bolts of lightning were like 9 heavenly pillars, sinking into the ground from the clouds in the sky, and surrounding Xianyuan Mose, who was sitting there. The crackling sound produced by each bolt of lightning was like an electric net that tightly sealed the surroundings, blocking Fengjiu's line of sight and preventing her from seeing Xianyuan Mose sitting there. As long as she couldn't see him, she wouldn't be able to know his situation at all times. This made her anxious, and the spiritual energy in her body surged, wanting to forcibly break through the fixed body. However, she didn't know what method Tianjizi used, and even with her strength, she couldn't break through the airflow that fixed her body. Boom! In the sky, muffled thunder rolled in the clouds. The sky was getting darker and darker, as if the entire sky was covered by a huge black cloth. The wind suddenly rose, blowing loudly, but could not blow away the clouds in the sky and the lightning in front of them that was like a pillar in the sky. Only the air pressure that was getting lower and lower made people feel more and more uneasy. In the sect and immortal world, Mu Chun and Mu Yu, who were practicing their movement skills in the courtyard, suddenly stopped. They clutched their chests and looked at the sky in a daze. They felt that the violent beating of their chests seemed to have lost its rhythm, making them feel more and more uneasy and panicked. As if they felt something, their faces also turned pale. Chunur, did that feeling appear again? Howard hurried to their side and hugged them tightly in his arms. Don't be afraid, Big Brother is here with you. Nothing will happen. Mu-Chun looked at the sky in a daze, feeling the strong uneasiness and fear in his heart. He shook his head and murmured, Big Brother, this time something may really happen. I feel that something is really going to happen. What should I do? I'm so scared. Chapter 4570. Howard hugged them tightly. He could feel their small bodies trembling. This had never happened in the past few days. It was obvious that today was different from the past few days. Don't think too much. It'll be fine, it'll be fine. He didn't know if he was comforting them or convincing himself. He pursed his lips, and his heart sank because of their fear and uneasiness. On the other side, on the mountain peak, the sky was so dark that one couldn't even see their own fingers. Only the lightning pillars formed by the 9 bolts of lightning crackled and shone brightly under the dark clouds. At the same time, in the area covered by Xianyuan Mose's spiritual power, there was a storm. The strong wind blew through the trees in the forest and tore the roofs of some houses apart. Some houses were even blown apart. Mud and rocks fell from some mountain peaks. It seemed like the mountains were going to collapse and the earth was going to crack. This commotion shocked practically everyone in that area. However, no one knew exactly what had happened. They didn't know why it suddenly became like this. On this side, in the clouds above the peak of the mountain, the heavenly lightning that hadn't fallen for a long time seemed to have gathered the great power of 49 days. Finally, when a bolt of lightning struck down with a crackle, the lightning struck down heavily from the clouds with a rumble, striking down towards the center of the 9 heavenly lightning pillars below. Fengjiu watched as the heavenly lightning struck towards the center of the lightning pillars. He was so shocked that his heart was in his mouth. He cried out mournfully, "No!" Boom! There was a loud rumble. It was as if a hole had been torn in the sky. It shook the entire ground. The sound of the heavenly lightning reverberated in the clouds, spreading throughout the heavens beyond heaven and reverberating in the skies of every heavenly region. The moment the heavenly lightning struck, the white-robed Tianjizi, who was originally standing beside Fengjiu, rushed out without any hesitation towards the 9 lightning pillars. At the same time, his voice also entered Fengjiu's ears. Fengjiu, Xianyuan Mose was originally a lone star, and you broke through the void and were born in defiance of the heavens. All the things you did in the past caused him to face the heavenly tribulation today. Even if people can conquer the heavens, there are times when the heavens can't predict the heavens. Today, I will use my old life to exchange for a chance to live. As for whether he can live, it will depend on his fate. In addition, You will also have to go through this heavenly tribulation in the future. You must remember, you must find the way to break through the 8 extremes of the heavenly Tao. Only then can you become an immortal and live as long as the heavens and earth. That voice echoed in her mind, word by word. It was extremely clear, and it brought great shock to her heart. She looked in front of her in disbelief. She watched as the white figure of Tian Jizi flew into the 9 lightning pillars and disappeared. She watched as the heavenly lightning struck inside and merged with the 9 lightning pillars, creating a powerful and dazzling light. The rumble didn't fall. It was as if it was echoing in her ears, accompanied by the crackling of lightning and the whistling of the wind. Chapter 45:71. However, when the scene before her became clear, her heart seemed to have stopped beating. She stood there blankly with a blank expression on her face. It was as if she had lost her soul. She didn't speak for a long time, nor did she move at all. The dark clouds in the sky dispersed, and the thunder stopped. The wind stopped, but the rain was still falling. A white figure and a red figure, together with Guan Shilin, Lung Shuang, and Lung Hua, flew over. When they saw Feng Jiao standing below, they looked at each other and hurried towards her. Xiao Jiao, Jiao, Master, Jun Ju Shang, dressed in white, hugged Wanyin Qianhua. The two of them looked at each other with a serious expression. They could not help but look at the pile of charred coal at the peak of the mountain. There was a faint sense of uneasiness in their hearts. Xiao Jiao, what happened? Where's Mose? Guan Shilin quickly walked to her side. He saw that she did not even use her spiritual energy to protect her body. She allowed the rain to hit her body. Her red clothes were already soaked, and the rain on her black hair was also dripping down. He did not know whether it was rain or tears on her face. He hurriedly used his own robe to shield her from the wind and rain, but he saw that she didn't even look at him as she walked forward. 1 step, 2 steps, she slowly arrived at the peak of the mountain. In front of a small pile of charred charcoal, she knelt down with a plop. Seeing this, the hearts of the people behind her sank. Lung Shuang and Lung Hua did not say anything. They only saw their master kneel down, so they also knelt down silently. Jun Ju Shang signaled to Wanyin Qianhua beside him. Wanyin Qianhua paused for a moment, then walked forward. He came to Feng Jiao's side and squatted down. What happened? What happened to Mose? Feng Jiao stared blankly at the pile of ash in front of him. He moved his lips and muttered, He's gone. He's gone. Wanyin Qianhua turned around and looked at Jun Ju Shang. The uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. We sensed the changes in the world he controlled. Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Heavenly thunder was unceasing. We guessed that something must have happened to him. Jun Jueshang walked to Wanyin Qianhua's side and looked at the pile of ashes in front of him. His eyes flickered. Did he go through the heavenly tribulation? 49 bolts of heavenly lightning, 1 bolt per day, for 49 days. The heavenly lightning is getting more and more powerful with each passing day. Today is the 49th bolt. Feng Jiao murmured. His body is covered with wounds, and there is not a single piece of intact skin. When the lightning struck his body, he was already covered with cuts and bruises, and he was exhausted. Before the heavenly lightning struck today, he was here. The 9 bolts of lightning formed a pillar and surrounded him. I couldn't see him. When the heavenly lightning struck, he disappeared. Her voice was hoarse and bitter. As she spoke, she raised her head and let the rain wash her face. She looked at the sky, as if she was crying and laughing at the same time. Suddenly, she shouted loudly, Mose! Mose! Come out! Come out! Tears mixed with the rain flowed down. She seemed to be exhausted. Her voice gradually became weak. Mose! Where are you? Husband, come out, come out. We still have to find our children. Our children have not been found yet. How can you bear to leave? How can you bear to leave me and the children behind? Mose, come back. Let's go home, okay? Chapter 45:72. Master, Jiao, Xiao Jiao. The people around her cried out in alarm when they saw her faint and reached out to catch her. In the end, Lung Shuang and Lung Hua, who were kneeling behind her, reached out to catch her falling figure. Guan Shilin went forward to carry her and said, "I'll send her back first." Lung Huayu. He looked at the pile of ash and pursed his lips. He said bitterly, "Put it away." "Yes." Lung Hua replied. He watched them leave first before he went forward and kowtowed 3 times in front of the pile of ash. Then he took out a jar and put it away. Guan Shilin carried Fengjiu to one of her residences on the floating island. Wanyan Qianhua and Lung Shuang helped her change her wet clothes. Guan Shilin, who was waiting outside, paced back and forth uneasily. "Do you think Mose is really dead?" Guan Shilin couldn't help but ask as he looked at Zheng Zhushang. Zheng Zhushang pursed his lips and said, "He's the Lord of heaven and earth. He shouldn't have died so easily. However, it's hard to say if it's the heavenly tribulation. You know that when we came over, we sensed the changes in heaven and earth. This time, he suffered 49 bolts of lightning." He paused and looked at him. Although Fengjiu didn't say anything about the pile of ash, "I think it's Xianyuan Moses." Guan Shilin clenched his fists. "No way. He wouldn't have died like that. He even fought against the Devil Master and survived. How could he have died under the heavenly tribulation? I don't believe it. I don't believe it either." His eyes were red and his voice was choked with sobs. "If he's really dead, what about my sister? What about their children? He wouldn't be so cruel as to leave them behind. He definitely wouldn't. Then tell me, how did the pile of ash come back? Where did he go? Where is he now? If he was still alive, how could he bear to see Fengjiu so heartbroken?" Zheng Zhushang clasped his hands behind his back as he spoke. He then looked at the tightly shut door and sighed. "It's not easy for those two to come this far. I thought that with the Devil Master dead, they could finally reunite as a family, but I didn't expect so many things to happen." Guan Shilin sat on a stone bench in the courtyard in a daze. He stared at the tightly shut door and muttered, "If he's really gone, how can Xiao Jiu bear it? And the children, if they knew about their father?" For a moment, his heart was filled with grief and mixed feelings. He didn't have a father by his side since he was young. He knew that kind of pain, and he didn't want his sister's child to suffer that kind of pain. Fengjiu's condition isn't very good. Coupled with this blow, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for her to recover in a short time. Zheng Zhushang said. As soon as he finished speaking, the door creaked open. "Qianhua, how's Xiaojiu?" Guan Shilin hurried forward and asked. "She's burning up. She's been talking nonsense, crying and laughing. I saw that she couldn't sleep well, so I hit her sleeping acupoint. Now she's asleep. I'll boil a bowl of medicine for her later," Wanyan Qianhua said and came to Zheng Zhushang's side. "I'll go in and have a look," Guan Shilin said and immediately strode inside. Chapter 45-73. Zheng Zhushang hugged her waist and said, "When the time comes, we'll know when we go to the world that he controls. He is the master of that world, and the whole world has his spiritual power. If he is no longer there, then his spiritual power will also disappear." Hearing this, Wanyan Qianhua sighed softly. "Why do you think they have so much suffering and pain?" Zheng Zhushang patted her hand and didn't answer, but said, "Aren't you going to decoct medicine for Fengjiu? I'll go with you." Thus the two of them walked out. In the room, Guan Shilin looked at Fengjiu lying on the bed with a pale face and couldn't help but feel sad. "Xiaojiu, there is no hurdle that cannot be overcome. You have to be strong and think about your children. They're still waiting for you." He reached out to touch her forehead and felt that it was burning hot. He said to Lung Shuang, "Get her a handkerchief to cool her down first. The others haven't come over yet, so you have to take care of her more." "Yes." Lung Shuang responded and used a wet handkerchief to help her cool down. On the other side, in the mortal world in the sect, Mu Chun and Mu Yu were sitting there, and tears fell uncontrollably. The two of them wiped away their tears and stared blankly at their hands and sleeves stained with tears. They didn't say a word, but their tears kept falling. Howard was alarmed and helped them wipe away their tears while comforting them. "Don't cry, it's okay, don't cry. Big brother, I didn't want to cry. The tears fell down by themselves. Muchin muttered. He clutched his chest with one hand and showed a painful expression. Big brother, my heart hurts, it hurts. Wah. Woo woo woo. Started to cry loudly. Previously, she was still resisting with great difficulty, but at this moment, it seemed as if she was unable to bear it any longer. Her tears gushed out as if a dam had burst open. 17 went to get some food and came back. Seeing them crying so sadly in the courtyard, she was startled and hurriedly put down the things in her hands and went forward. What's wrong? Did something happen? No one responded to him because Mu Chun and Mu Yu were crying so hard that they couldn't catch their breath. Mu Chun, who had been sobbing without making a sound, also started crying when Yu started crying. How? Or had never encountered such a situation before. He tried to coax her in a flurry, but he felt more and more uneasy. Suddenly, he noticed that the spiritual aura of the two people was surging as they cried, as if something wanted to break through. He was startled for a moment, and his face turned pale. Was the blood curse cast by the Devil Lord about to be broken? How could this be? The blood curse was placed on them by their blood. As long as their parents were still alive, the binding of the blood curse would not be easily broken. But now, could it be that something had really happened to his father or mother? For a moment, he was flustered and didn't know what to do. But when he saw Mu Chun and Mu Yu's spiritual aura fluctuating, he was worried that it would attract the attention of the people in the sect. He immediately shouted to 17, "Go guard the courtyard. Don't let anyone in." Chapter 45-74. At this moment, what they did not expect was that the people from the upper realm had come down and were asking the sect master about something. In the sect conference hall, an old man in gray stroked his beard and looked at the sect master, asking, "You sent a message saying that there are a few children from the upper realm here, and they have a sacred beast with them? What is going on here? Tell me in detail." Reporting to the Venerable One, it's like this. The sect master explained the situation to them and said, "So we brought them back." The older child said that the Venerable One is here and wants to talk to you. He wants the Venerable One to bring them back to the upper realm. The surname Xinyuan? This surname is very rare. As far as I know, there is no family with this surname in the upper realm. The old man pondered and looked at the sect master, saying, "They really don't have anyone accompanying them to protect them? Only a silver wolf of the sacred beast level and a guard with mediocre strength?" That's right. They have been living here for quite some time. Usually, they don't walk around the sect much. They spend most of their time in that courtyard. Because they have a silver wolf, a sacred beast, guarding the courtyard, we can't send people to keep an eye on them. However, they really don't have anyone else by their side. There are only the 3 children, a silver wolf, and a guard. Let them come and see us. Let's sound them out first and see where they're from. The old man took a sip of tea as he spoke. "Yes, I will ask someone to invite them over now," the sect master said, and wanted to call a disciple over. However, after thinking for a while, he said to the 3rd elder, "You go and make a trip." Okay. The 3rd elder also knew that the master was afraid of the silver wolf, which was a super divine beast, and was worried that his disciple would cause trouble if he went there. Hence, after he responded, he bowed towards them and walked out. Seeing that they were just going to call people over, the sect master actually asked an elder of the sect to go. The middle-aged man sitting at the back smiled when he saw this. "Looks like you really value those children." The sect master smiled and said, "Knowing that they are nobles from the upper realm, we naturally wouldn't dare to slight them." This was the first reason. The second reason was that the bloody scene in front of the city governor's estate was still replaying in their minds even now, and it truly caused them to feel reverence in their hearts, causing them to not dare show the slightest disrespect. Over here, the few people in the main hall were chatting with the sect master. They talked about how and the others while waiting for their arrival. However, after a long while, they only saw the 3rd elder returning alone. "Where are they? Is he not here?" the sect leader asked, slightly surprised. 3rd elder bowed to them before he said, "I went to the small courtyard. Guard 17 was waiting outside. He said that they weren't feeling well and couldn't come today, so I came back first." When they heard this, the people from the sects from the higher realms frowned. One of them said, "These children are really outrageous. We came especially for them, yet they avoided us? How rude." When the sect master saw this, he hurriedly said, "I don't think they would evade us for no reason. I guess they really are not feeling well. After all, those children are still young, and they have been looking forward to your arrival. Naturally, they would find an excuse to not come." Then, the sect master looked at the third elder and said, "Since they are not feeling well, quickly ask the sect physician to take a look at them." Chapter 45-75. Seeing the old man stand up, the sect leader hurriedly stood up and said, "Since that's the case, please follow me." As he spoke, he personally led the way and brought them to the small courtyard where the children lived. When they arrived at the small courtyard, they saw 17 standing outside in a guard's uniform. Seeing him, the sect leader said, "I heard that your family's young masters are not feeling well. These are venerables from the upper realm. They are proficient in medicine. Why don't you let them take a look at them?" 17 bowed to them and stood in front of the courtyard door, saying, "My family's young master has instructed that he will not see anyone. Please return. Since they are not feeling well, it's better to take a look." A middle-aged man said and took a step forward. However, he did not expect that the guard would dare to block his way. His face darkened, and with a flick of his sleeve, he pushed the guard away. "Impudent! How dare you block my path? My lord, please calm down." Seeing him make a move, the sect leader was worried that 17 would be angered if he hurt him. He hurriedly went forward and pushed 17 into the courtyard while blocking the airflow. Even though he blocked the airflow, his body was still pushed back a few steps. 17 was pushed into the courtyard by the sect leader and avoided the force. He was not injured, but his body lost balance for a moment. His steps were unsteady as he retreated into the courtyard. He barely managed to stabilize himself. The silver wolf, who was lying in the corner of the courtyard, glanced at the commotion in front of the courtyard door. It lazily got up, stretched its back, and walked over. Just as the few people were about to enter, it directly blocked the front of the courtyard door. "Who allowed you to enter? Get out!" Its gaze contained a powerful pressure, and its voice was filled with hostility, causing the few people who were walking in to stop in their tracks. For a moment, they did not take another step forward. "This is the sacred beast?" The old man stroked his beard as he stared at the silver wolf with a glint in his eyes. Yes, that's it," the sect leader hurriedly replied. "It is indeed a sacred beast and an extremely rare silver wolf," the old man said. He looked at the silver wolf that could speak and asked, "Where did you come from?" "As far as I know, even in our upper realm, there are very few sacred beasts that appear. The surname Xinyuan is also very rare." The silver wolf glanced at the few people in front of it. Seeing that they were only flying immortal cultivators, a trace of contempt flashed across its eyes. "Which heaven realm are you in? What was the sect called? What is the level of the strongest person in your sect?" Seeing that the silver wolf did not answer his question and instead threw out a few questions, the old man suppressed the displeasure in his heart and said, "Even if you are a sacred beast, you are still a beast. Even if I tell you, you won't understand. But what about those children? Didn't you want us to bring them back to the upper realm? If you don't call them out for us to get to the bottom of this, we won't bring them to the upper realm." The silver wolf glanced at him coldly and said, "Come back tomorrow. They're not feeling well now." As soon as its voice fell, the people standing in the courtyard suddenly felt a strong wave of spiritual energy surging out from inside. Immediately, the people standing at the entrance of the courtyard were shocked. Chapter 45-76. Puff, Howard spat out a mouthful of blood. Looking at his brother and sister, whose spiritual energy was surging, he endured the pain in his chest and stood up. Chun, he quickly stepped forward and came to the bedside. Looking at the two who had collapsed, he called out worriedly and anxiously, "Chun, wake up." He shook them gently and quickly realized that their spiritual energy was recovering bit by bit. That pure aura surged out of their bodies and permeated around them. Seeing this, he was stunned and quickly reached out to feel their pulse. With this, he was even more stunned. Has the blood curse been broken? Why is it like this? Could it be that something really happened to father and mother? There was a moment of panic and helplessness in his heart. It was a good thing that the blood curse had been broken, but why would it be broken for no reason? Then there was only one possibility. Something really happened to their father and mother. In the courtyard outside, because the silver wolf was worried about how and the rest in the room, it quickly rushed into the room when the airflow surged. When it came into the room, it saw the two unconscious children lying on the bed and the blood at the corner of its master's mouth. It hurriedly asked, "What happened? How are they? Are you okay? You can't go in." 17 tried to stop them, but how could he stop them with his strength? "Let them in." They pushed him aside and strode in. When they saw the scene inside, everyone's expression changed slightly. They thought that saying that the children were not feeling well was an excuse. They did not expect that something really happened. What happened to them? I'm skilled in medicine. Let me take a look at them. Without waiting for the silver wolf to turn around and reveal its ferocious look, the old man spoke and took a tentative step forward at the same time. In fact, the silver wolf's existence was very intimidating. Even if they were cultivators of the fairy realm, they could not fight with the combat power of a sacred beast. Therefore, they naturally did not dare to offend it. Howard paused for a moment and said to the silver wolf, "Let him come over." Seeing this, the silver wolf retreated, but its gaze was still fixed on the old man who walked forward. Under the silver wolf's hostile gaze, the old man walked forward to the bedside. After seeing the faces of the three children, he could not help but secretly praise them in his heart. What an outstanding appearance. The old man glanced at Howard and asked, "Do you want me to take a look at them first?" "No need. Look at them." "How?" said and looked at his brother and sister on the bed. Seeing this, the old man nodded and went forward to check their pulse. Not long after, he said, "The aura in their bodies are slightly chaotic, but it's nothing." "That's it?" Howard frowned. The old man glanced at him and asked, "What else can we do?" "What else?" "When are you going back to the upper world?" "When?" "Of course, any time is fine, but—" The old man stroked his beard, glanced at him, and said, "We can't bring you to the upper realm now, unless the Howard frowned and said, 'Speak.'" Chapter 4577. How? Glanced at him coldly and lifted his chin slightly, revealing an arrogant look on his face. He snorted coldly and said, "Seeing the silver wolf beside me, you should know that we are not the children of ordinary families. Even the clan leader of a century-old family can only bow his head in respect in front of us. You, a mere cultivator of the fairy realm, want to make things difficult for us and threaten us? Are you not afraid that we will destroy your sect in the future?" Hearing this, and looking at the noble and arrogant aura emanating from the young man in front of them, and the words that came out of his mouth were about to destroy their sect, the old man, as well as the few people behind him, could not help but feel their hearts skip a beat. Their faces faintly revealed solemn expressions, as if they were deep in thought. Some of the thoughts that had arisen in their minds were also put to rest because of the threat and sternness in his words. At this moment, they could not help but reevaluate the three children in front of them. Not to mention the twins, just the young man in front of them, who was about 10 years old, was only a small child. However, from the moment he saw them, no matter whether it was his expression or his bearing, there was not a trace of restraint or uneasiness. On the contrary, his body naturally exuded a calmness that was not supposed to be present at his age. Especially when he said those words, the expression between his brows, that tone, that gaze, they were all clearly the attitude of a superior person. It was as if the strength of the fairy realm cultivators was not worth mentioning at all in front of him. What kind of family would raise such a child? What kind of family would raise a child with such a bearing? What kind of parents would give birth to such an outstanding child? At this moment, they could not help but ponder deeply as their hearts drummed. If it were just these three children, it would have been fine. However, They had a powerful sacred beast by their side. This was the reason why they did not dare to underestimate them. One had to know that even the sects in the upper realm did not have such a powerful sacred beast. What kind of family would it be? What kind of parents would allow a child to form a contract with such a powerful sacred beast? For a moment, his original intention of threatening them to reveal their origins and identities was dispelled by the counter-threat of this young boy in front of him. Thus, he became serious and uneasy. The old man was not the only one who was shocked. The people behind him were the same. The sect master and third elder were the most shocked of all. The bloody scene in front of the governor's palace that day was enough to shock them. However, the threat from this child's mouth shocked them even more. They did not expect that this child would dare to look down on the venerable ones from the upper realm sections. It seemed that they really had an extraordinary background and could not be offended. Howard looked at them and saw that they were all deep in thought. He said, "We're going back to the upper realm now. Make some preparations and bring us back." This was no longer a discussion, but a direct order, because he knew that if he didn't show his strength, these people would take advantage of him instead. Now, he didn't know what had happened to his parents, but judging from Mu Chun and Mu Yu's situation, he knew that something must have happened. Therefore, he wanted to go back as soon as possible and bring his younger siblings back to his parents' side. Chapter 4578. Didn't you say they were fine? Howard glanced at him and asked. The old man was stunned and could not speak for a long time. "We just arrived today, and it's getting late. Even if we want to go back, we should wait until tomorrow." The middle-aged man behind stepped forward and said, "Yes, young master, it doesn't matter if we wait a little longer. Why don't we rest today and prepare for our journey tomorrow morning?" The sect leader also stepped forward to persuade him. Howard paused for a moment before saying, "All right, we'll wait until tomorrow morning. You guys go out, we want to rest." Hearing that he was directly chasing them away, although everyone was a little angry, they did not say anything. After looking at each other, they turned and walked out, leaving the courtyard first. After they left, Howard said to the silver wolf, "Go and keep an eye on them. Don't let them sneak away." The silver wolf was stunned for a moment, looked at him strangely, and then went out. Run? Probably not, right? 17 retreated and went outside to guard. After they left, Howard sat down by the bed. He clutched his slightly painful chest and looked at his brother and sister who were asleep. Then he sat cross-legged by the bed and adjusted his breath to heal the internal injuries that he had just suffered. On the other side, the sect leader led the few people from the upper realm to another courtyard to rest. After settling them down, he was ordered to leave by them. Therefore, he did not know what they were talking about in the courtyard. However, when he left the courtyard and was about to leave, he saw a flash of white. He was stunned for a moment and subconsciously looked over. He saw that the silver wolf's eyes were coldly glancing at him with a warning. Then, it gently landed on the roof of the courtyard and found a place to lie down. Seeing this, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. He did not dare to say a word and quietly left. In the courtyard, in the house, a few venerables from the upper realm were sitting around a table with a serious expression on their faces. What family do you think these 3 children are from? Do they really have the ability to do that? The middle-aged man said with a look of uncertainty, "We have to be careful with this matter. Look at him. He's just a 10-year-old child, and he actually threatened us to destroy our sect. If he's not really ignorant, then he must have the confidence and strength to do so. Plus, there's that snow wolf. That's a sacred beast. But look, the contract master of that sacred beast is that child." The old man said with a serious expression. He looked at the few people and said, "I'm really worried that they have a powerful background. If we really offend them, I'm afraid it will cause trouble for the sect." Didn't the sect leader say that? Some time ago, that child ordered that silver wolf to destroy an aristocratic family. At that time, more than 100 cultivators came to besiege them, including that family's patriarch. All died extremely tragically. Another person said with a frown, "I want to. Since the higher-ups want us to bring them back, then let's bring them back first. As for their origins, We can't find out. Let's wait until we get to the upper realm and ask the sect leader. I think it's better for us to go back first. If it's really troublesome, it'll be troublesome to bring them back to the sect. Why don't we go back first? They can't go to the upper realm. Even if they want to find us, they can't. Isn't that better? Chapter 45-79. Just as the few of them made up their minds and were about to sneak back, they heard a light knock on the roof. The few of them were startled. They looked at each other and quickly walked out. When they arrived at the courtyard and looked at the roof, they couldn't help but stiffen. They saw that the silver wolf had come to their courtyard unknowingly and was lying on the roof resting. At this time, when it saw them coming out, it actually grinned at them and showed its sharp wolf teeth. It licked its tongue with a bit of a bloodthirsty breath, which inexplicably made them feel cold. It didn't speak, but condescendingly stared at them with its ferocious eyes, which made them stop their thoughts. They coughed lightly, and one of them said, "Let's rest today." After saying that, he went into the house first. In another courtyard, after Hao adjusted his breath, he felt that the injury caused by the airflow had eased a little. He restrained his breath and opened his eyes to look at his younger brother and sister on the bed. Seeing that the two were still not awake and their clothes were slightly wet from sweat, he called, "Shichi, prepare a basin of hot water." "Yes." Shichi, who was guarding outside, answered and went to the kitchen to get a bucket of hot water and a small basin. He came to the bedside and asked, "Young master, do you need me to come down?" "No need, you can go out." "Ow," said and asked him to put down the things and go out first. Seeing this, Shichi quietly retreated and went to guard outside. Hao just took off their outer clothes, dipped a handkerchief in the hot water, and helped them wipe the sweat on their body. He also put a hot towel on their eyes that were slightly swollen from crying, and then sat beside them to watch them. After a while, he saw the long eyelashes of the two people on the bed trembling slightly. He hurriedly called, "Chuna, you're awake?" The two slowly opened their eyes and saw their elder brother's worried gaze. They were stunned, as if they thought of something, and called, "Elder brother." Then they sat up. "How do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Hao hurriedly asked. The two pursed their lips and looked at each other. Among them, Mu-chan said, "Elder brother, I think my sealed memory has recovered." "Me too. I remember father and mother." Yu said, then biting her lips, she said, "But I can't wake up the contract beast within my body." Mu-chan said, "I think 1/3 of the blood curse in our bodies is loosened, but the rest is unchanged." Hearing this, Hao paused, looked at him, and asked, "You can't even summon your contracted beast?" "Yeah, it's like he's in a deep sleep." As Mu-chan spoke, his little face darkened. He slowly lowered his gaze and said, "Big brother, something happened to father. When we broke the blood curse of one of the three people, we felt it. Something happened to father." Beside him, Muyu didn't say anything, but the tears that she had stopped with great difficulty also silently dripped down. Hao-er's heart sank, and he said, "The members of the sects from the upper dimension have arrived, and they'll bring us to the upper dimension tomorrow. Perhaps we'll be able to find a way to contact Mother and the others once we arrive there." He reached out to hug the two and said, "Don't worry, Mother is here. Nothing will happen to Father." Even though he said that, he knew in his heart that their father's tribulation would not be easy to pass if it could loosen the blood curse in their bodies. Chapter 45-80. The next morning, after tidying up, they left the courtyard and went to the front. They saw that the people from the upper realm had ugly expressions. The silver wolf came to their side after seeing them. "All right, everyone is here. Let's go." The people said and led Hao and the others to the forbidden area at the back of the sect. When they arrived at the forbidden area, the people stood in the middle. They glanced at Hao and the others and said, "We used the teleportation array between the two sects to leave. You guys stand in the middle." Seeing this, Hao kept the silver wolf in his space and led Mu-chun and Muyu forward. They stood in the middle, and 17 stood behind them. As the array was activated, A complicated pattern floated on the ground. Then, with a flash of light, the people in the array disappeared with the light. On the floating island, Wanyin Qianhua and Leng Shuang were taking care of Fengjiu. Seeing that she had not woken up, Wanyin Qianhua said, "Her fever has subsided, but she's still sleeping. This can't be done." Jun Jueshang, who came in with Leng Hua, heard her words and said, "Her condition is good. There won't be any big problems. It's only a matter of time before she wakes up." Wanyin Qianhua walked over and saw him sit down at the table, so he also sat down beside him. He looked at Leng Hua and asked, "Is there still no news of Mu Chun and Mu Yu? How also? These three children have been outside for quite some time. Why haven't we found their whereabouts yet? We've already sent more people to look for them. I've also instructed the subordinates to go to the various heaven realms to gather information." Leng Hua said, "Send more people. Report back as soon as you find them." Wanyin Qianhua instructed. "Understood." Leng Hua replied, "I wonder how Guanxilin went back to the heaven realm to check. Has Moses' spiritual energy completely dissipated?" Wanyin Qianhua mumbled and stood up again, unable to sit still. Jun Jushang saw that she was so annoyed. So he held her hand and said, "Well, it's useless to be anxious. Let's just wait for the news. During this period of time, stay here and accompany Fengjiu. See if there's anything we can do to help." "How can I help? Look at how things are now." "There's nothing we can do to help," Wanyin Qianhua said angrily, but he still calmed down and sat down. "Master is awake." Leng Shuang's surprised voice came, and Leng Hua hurried forward. Wanyin Qianhua was also happy and hurried to the bedside. On the bed, Fengjiu slowly opened her eyes. When she saw them, she was still in a daze and asked, "Why are you all here? You've caused such a big commotion. How can we not come?" Wanyin Qianhua said, and glanced at her with his beautiful eyes. He sat on the bed and held her hand, scolding her, "You really don't know how to cherish yourself. How did you get yourself into this state? You'll get over it eventually, but you don't even cherish your own body. Now that you're sick, what energy do you have to do other things?" Fengjiu listened to his scolding without any expression on his face. He just stared blankly, as if he was thinking about something. After a long time, he struggled to get up. "You're still sick. You had a fever for an entire night, and it's only now gone. What do you want to do now?" Wanyin Qianhua said, pressing down on her and not letting her get up. "You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.